Welcome everyone to another explainer. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a piece of tech that has completely rewired how front-end and back-end systems talk to each other. Yep, we're talking about GraphQL. You've probably heard the massive hype surrounding it, but today we're putting the hype aside to look at the architectural reality. We're going to unpack exactly what it is, how it actually functions under the hood, and honestly, most importantly, what it takes to run it securely in production. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with a quick definition. What is it? Well, GraphQL is a super flexible API query language that lets the client ask for exactly the data it needs from the backend. Think about a traditional API kind of like a fast food combo meal. You order the number 2 and you get exactly what comes with the number 2, right? Whether you actually wanted that side of fries or not. GraphQL, on the other hand, is like walking up to a custom buffet. The client writes a specific query and basically builds its own plate, picking only the exact fields it actually wants to consume. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by meeting your new flexible API, then we'll compare GraphQL head-to-head with REST APIs, look under the hood at how it works, do a quick back-end reality check, and finally figure out exactly when you should choose to use it. All right, Section 1, meet your flexible API, or as I like to call it, solving those massive front-end data frustrations. You see, GraphQL was created to solve two huge headaches: overfetching and underfetching. Overfetching happens when an API returns way more data than you actually need. Imagine calling an endpoint just to display a user's first name, but the server dumps their entire profile, order history, and account settings right into your lap. It's a massive waste of bandwidth. Underfetching is the exact opposite. That's when one API response just doesn't give you enough data, so your front end is forced to make multiple consecutive API calls just to render one single page. GraphQL solves both of these instantly. It lets the client request exactly what it needs, no more, no less. Moving right along to Section 2, GraphQL versus REST APIs, and the major architectural shift this brings. Now, a traditional REST API is resource-based. It relies on multiple distinct endpoints, and it's highly predictable. If you want a user, you hit the user's endpoint. If you want orders, well, you hit the order's endpoint. Simple. But GraphQL takes a totally different approach. It's query-based and typically exposes only one single endpoint. The client sends completely different queries to that one endpoint, which makes it incredibly flexible and super powerful for complex apps. Let's ground this with a real-world scenario from our source material. Imagine you're building an admin dashboard for a vending machine company. To load just this one dashboard page, the front end needs the machine's basic info, its physical location, the business owner's details, the latest sales figures, and the current machine status. Now, if you build this with a traditional REST API, your front end is going to have to make 4 or more separate network requests, one for machines, one for locations, one for sales, and another for status. But with GraphQL, look at this. It's just one single request. The front end asks for exactly those specific fields in one payload, and the back end handles the rest. This literally slashes your network chatter. Okay, let's jump to Section 3, under the GraphQL hood. We're talking operations, schema, and resolvers. So what can you actually do with it? There are 3 primary operations a client can send to that single endpoint. First, you have a query, which is simply for reading data, like loading a list of products. Second is a mutation. You use this when you need to actually change data, so things like submitting forms or creating orders. And third, a subscription. This is for your real-time updates. Think live chat messages or live dashboard updates, which are typically running over WebSockets. But how does the system actually know what you are allowed to ask for? Well, it breaks down into 3 steps. Step 1 is the schema. This is a strict, strongly typed contract defining exactly what data and fields exist in the system. Step 2, the client uses that schema to request a very specific shape of data. And step 3, resolvers. Resolvers are essentially the back-end code blocks that get triggered to go out to the database and fetch the exact data the client just asked. To really summarize this architecture, the schema defines what is possible. The resolvers define how to get the data. Think of the schema as your menu, telling the front-end developers exactly what they can order. The resolvers, those are the chefs in the kitchen, actually cooking up the data and putting it on the plate. All right, time for Section 4, the back-end reality check. Because guys, it's not magic, it is engineering. 101. Take a look at that number. That number represents a backend developer's absolute worst nightmare when it comes to GraphQL. So where does 101 come from? It comes from what's known as the N+1 problem. Imagine a client queries for 100 users and also asks for all of their orders. If your backend resolvers are lazy and unoptimized, the system is going to execute one initial query to get the 100 users, and then it'll execute 100 individual separate queries to get the orders for each user. That is 101 database queries for a single API request. That will absolutely crush your database performance. To fix it, backend engineers have to step up and use batching and caching tools, like Data Loader, to bundle those requests and hit the database efficiently. And because of risks exactly like that, running GraphQL in production requires running a strict gauntlet of rules. You absolutely need query depth and complexity limits. If you don't have them, a malicious client could just ask for a wildly nested query that crashes your whole server. You need authorization down at the field or resolver level. You also need complex caching strategies. Remember, you only have one endpoint now, so you can't just easily cache responses by URL like you did with REST. You're also going to need cursor-based pagination, and you have to protect introspection. Otherwise, you might accidentally leak your entire internal API map to the public. As this quote perfectly sums up, GraphQL gives clients more flexibility, so the backend must enforce stronger boundaries. Implementing this does not give the backend a free pass. If anything, it demands that backend teams be even more vigilant about security, performance, and architecture than they were with a traditional REST setup. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, when to choose GraphQL. Let's talk about pragmatic tech decisions. So when should you actually use it? You should go with GraphQL when your front-end screens need highly flexible data. We're talking complex dashboards with lots of nested, related objects, or when mobile bandwidth is critical and you really want to avoid multiple round trips to the server. On the flip side, stick with REST when your API is simple, like basic CRUD apps, or when you're working with a smaller team. REST is also vastly superior if caching by URL is a core part of your performance strategy, or if you're building a public API where you just need things to be simple and predictable. Basically, GraphQL is an incredibly powerful, specific tool. It's definitely not a universal replacement for REST. So I'll leave you with this question to ask yourself about your own projects. Does your system actually need ultimate data flexibility, or would a simpler REST API be a cleaner, safer choice for you? It's all about picking the right tool for the job. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gave you a much clearer picture of both the incredible power and the heavy responsibility that comes with GraphQL. See you next time.